A Course in Miracles, a transcription of the shorthand notes manuscripts of Helen Schuckman. So reading from that, you vaguely know that this course is intended for some sort of preparation. I can only say that you are not prepared. I was amused when you reminded Bill that he too was being prepared for something quite unexpected, and he said he was not at all curious about what it was. This disinterest is very characteristic of him when he is afraid. Interest and fear do not go together, as your respective behavior clearly shows. Mental retardation is a defense which, like the others except the atonement, can be used on behalf of error or truth, as elected. When it occurs in reality, it is a temporary device agreed on beforehand to check the miscreative abilities of strong but misdirected wills. So it's early in the book, and there's a lot of, the very, very first person Jesus is the way it's written, especially early on in the book. Um, and some things are just more like technical, administrative type statements to Helen versus information for everybody in general. The word disinterest is in this book another time. I think, um, you know, um, people can, or I mean, the understanding to me was paraphrasing the idea in the book, but it was something about to be disinterested is not powerful, right? Like I'm just disinterested in everybody. Therefore, I'm not judging anybody. I'm not doing anything wrong or whatever. I'm disinterested. No, disinterested is not um, a spiritual way of being. Um, there's a sentence in the book about it. It's probably coming up. Interest and fear, fear do not go together. I mean, yeah. So in the Urantia book, Urantia, the Urantia book, the gospel of Jesus is the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, which for me basically means doing the will of God and service to others, whatever that might mean in any given moment. But that's the focus: is to be involved, be interested, do your best in terms of getting involved. The focus is on being involved with others. There are alone times for meditation or the basics, as far as showers and food and whatever. There are alone times, but that's not the focus. The focus is always on being as active with others as possible in whatever ways in terms of service. I mean, so this was written like around the late 60s. So the little phrase here, mental retardation, is um, you know, I mean, I don't know. It's not politically correct, but anyway, but the idea here is interesting. Um, for me, it's saying that this is about reincarnation, that somebody would go into what is real mental illness in terms of inability to relate. Somebody would do that um, in a lifetime to check their misdirected but strong will. Um, that's what I would say about it. All right, reading from ACIM. It is necessary that this appropriate use of the defense be considered real because otherwise it cannot serve. The lesson involves not only the individual himself, but also his parents, siblings, and all of those who come in close relation with him. The value of the experience depends on the need of each particular learner. The person himself is a poor learner by definition, only as a step toward changing from a bad to a good one. Mental retardation can also be used as a maladaptive defense if the wrong or attack side is employed. This produces the pseudo retardation syndrome, which is justly classified as a psychiatric or disturbed level Symptom. Both of you do this all the time. Bill acts as if he does not understand even his own special language, let alone mine, and you cannot read at all. Uh, um, I mean, it's talking here about parents, siblings, and all those in close relation. For me, the Seth books, by Jane Roberts. There's a tremendous amount of information in all those books about reincarnation. And that's my belief about reincarnation. So, all the things Seth says about reincarnation in those books, in terms of, uh, sometimes there are like a small group of people will reincarnate, in terms of sometimes they're the parent, sometimes they're the child, sometimes they're the other type of relative or whatever. Um, Seth goes into that. Uh, I mean, the goal is always to get to Jesus like enlightenment. I mean, that's always the goal for everyone, regardless of anything else. So, yes, the average human life involves reincarnation currently on this world. Um, uh, but it's all, I mean, there are many steps backwards that many people take in terms of growth towards perfect peace, perfect joy, perfect love, perfect goodness, no feelings of grievances or no feelings of deprivations, no remorse, no disappointment, no sorrow, etc. None of those negative emotions are ever present. Nothing but a phenomenal sense of tranquility, joy, peace, strength, love, goodness about everything, every thought leading to every word, leading to every action, moment to moment. That's the spiritual growth development. Um, you know, to perfect that, to bring that to the levels of a Jesus of Nazareth. So that's the goal overall. Uh, uh, so some various psychiatric type terms in here that Helen would recognize early on in the book. She would just understand the language, the ideas here being presented. All right, reading from ACIM. This represents a joint attack on both yourselves and me, because it renders your mind weak and mine incomplete. Remember, this puts you in a truly fearful position. If you cannot understand either your own mind or mine, you do not know what is really willed. It is thus impossible to avoid conflict as defined before, because even if you act according to will, you wouldn't know it. So the author here can say my mind, and basically the idea is that the God mind is one mind. There are many individuals, humans, angels, many individual beings, but mind is one in terms of agreement, harmony, joy, peace, strength, goodness, that which is right or wrong, etc., etc. Mind is one in those terms. So for the author here to say, my mind is perfectly acceptable because it's all about commonality of beliefs, commonality of understanding. Um, that's what spiritual growth is. Well, one of the things that it's all about. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's all about perfect attunement to the will of God is a fair phrase. I don't think the book uses the word attunement, but that's a fair idea. And perfect oneness with God in the sense of thinking with God, willing with God. God Himself, the first person of the Trinity, is perfect peace, joy, love, goodness, strength, kindness, tenderness, none of those negative emotions ever, moment to moment. That's who God Himself is. That's who every human being is in truth, in terms of their real self, their capital S self. So it's about removing all the blocks to that full awareness of our perfect selves about everything. And every physical behavior has a right and a wrong. You know, the mind can be right or wrong. Every physical behavior has a right way of going about it, where there's perfect peace, joy, strength, supremely happy, purely joyous, no negative emotions present. Or there's a false way of going about every physical behavior, every physical action, where remorse, doubt, disappointment, feelings of grievances, etc., will come in. Okay, ACIM. The next part of this course rests too heavily on the earlier part not to require its study. Without this, you will become too fearful when the unexpected does occur to make constructive use of it. However, as you study the notes, you will see some of the obvious implications unless you still persist in misusing the defense of mental retardation. Please remember that its constructive use described above is hardly a real part of your own real proper equipment, is a particularly inappropriate defense as you use it, and I can only urge you to avoid it. So, the book obviously requires study. I mean, learning means change. Study is important. That's what I'm doing right now. Study the information, learn it, understand it, and live it experientially. Um, uh, so the unexpected does occur. So there's a sense in the book, truth is not frail. So yes, every moment, moment to moment, something unexpected, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm looking, whoever I'm looking at, whatever is going on, moment to moment, the unexpected comes up all the time. So, but the mind of peace, joy, strength, love, goodness, Jesus like mind, Christ like mind in terms of strength, patience, kindness, all of it, moment to moment, is undisturbed about anything unexpected. Nothing can disturb, you know, uh, real spiritual peace, joy, strength, goodness, no matter what it is, moment to moment. There's never any reaction except love, joy, peace, goodness, strength, no matter what anyone's doing anywhere, no matter what's going on at any moment, no matter what I'm looking at or what's going on or anything about it. There's never the slightest mental upset. I define fear as a mental upset of any kind, mental discomfort of any kind, anything outside of perfect peace, joy, strength, love, goodness is a mental upset, and they cannot occur um, for the spiritually developed in any way, no matter what's going on. The constructive use of mental retardation. Again, from a reincarnational standpoint, there are many different scenarios going on as to why somebody would live a certain type of life, whether it's I mean, Seth talks about, somebody might choose a life as with a serious physical disability on purpose for whatever the reasons are. I mean, there's all sorts of things about that in terms of the choice of a reincarnational life. ACIM, the reason why a solid foundation is necessary at this point is because of the highly likely confusion of fearful and awesome, which most people do make. You will remember that we said once before that awe is inappropriate in connection with the sons of God, because you should not experience awe in the presence of your own equals. But it was emphasized that awe is a proper reaction to the soul in the presence of its creator. Um, Well, foundation, I mean, learn. I want to learn slowly but surely books like this in terms of the information. Um, Understand the ideas. Book talks about the integration of the mind. That certainly makes sense in terms of what that, everything that that idea means. There's a sense in the book about, the ego mentality wants to equate everything. So whether it's the will of God, peace, joy, strength, goodness for real, or whether it's those negative emotions or anything and everything, the ego simply wants to equate everything. Like nothing's better than anything else in terms of what's going on in the moment. So then to the ego, anger makes perfect sense, sadness, disappointment, feelings of deprivation, etc. make perfect sense. Guilt, remorse makes perfect sense. To the ego mentality, none of that should ever be present in terms of real spiritual development, who someone really is in terms of their capital S self, is how ACIM puts it. So all is inappropriate to any being except the first person of the Trinity, God Himself, God the Father. Worship all goes to God the Father because of who He is. God the Father is love, joy, peace, strength, goodness. Yes, God the Father is also in charge of everything in terms of physical realities, spiritual realities, mentally. God's in charge of everything and has the power to do anything, and maintains the power of directing everything. So that is God Himself, the first person of the Trinity. But we love God because of His joy, peace, love, goodness, kindness, tenderness, who He is as a person. There should be no awe to Jesus of Nazareth or anybody else. There should be no awe to, in ACIM terms, there should be no awe to Ken Wapnick, Eckhart Tolle, Gary Renard, and Keith Kavanaugh is somebody else kind of fairly new out there who's somewhat of a known teacher. Anybody like that, no awe towards them at all. Marianne Williamson, no awe towards any of those people at all. ACIM. So far, this course has had only indirect recourse to God and rarely even refers to Him directly. I have repeatedly emphasized that awe is not appropriate in connection with me because of our inherent equality. I have been careful to clarify my own role in the atonement without either over or understating it. I have tried to do exactly the same things in connection with yours. Yes, ACIM does not overemphasize a personal God at all. There's a couple sentences in the book where it says God is the prime creator and He created His co-creators, which would be the other two members of the Trinity. I believe that sentence starts out talking about the Trinity. There's another sentence in the book about God and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and it uses the word Trinity, I believe, in that sentence or in that paragraph. So it's in the book, but it's not overemphasized at all. So Jesus of Nazareth. I mean, so in your Urantia book terms, Urantia book, Jesus of Nazareth is actually Michael of Nebadon, who is in charge of a local universe, which would be a particular area of the entire physical creation. So um, that's the Urantia book about Jesus of Nazareth, Michael of Nebadon. ACIM. The next step, however, does involve the direct approach to God Himself. It would be most unwise to start on this step at all without very careful preparation, or all will surely be confused with fear, and the experience will be more traumatic than beatific. Well, those two little words combined, God Himself, is in this book like 500 times. So it's in the book a lot, as far as, God being a personal being. I mean, it's in the book a lot. Uh, the ego mentality, the littleness of the ego mentality, the book talks a lot about that. There's a lot to that subject. All right, ACIM. Healing is of God in the end. The means are carefully explained in the notes. Revelation has occasionally shown you the end, but to reach it, the means are needed. So, healing, mind purification is necessary first, is a sentence in this book. Healing, real healing. So, if my mind or anyone's mind is truly pure in terms of the right way to think, say, do everything in terms of everything, moment to moment, the right beliefs about things, and nothing is experienced but a perfect peace, joy, love, goodness, no feelings of deprivation, no mental upsets, no fear of any kind, moment to moment. Then God Himself can come in and add His energy to someone's mind and strengthen it, secure it, bring them a feeling of safety in terms of their mind. No ego thoughts can penetrate their mind anymore. Um, Real healing, real, that's Jesus levels of mind, Gautama Siddhartha Buddha levels of mind in terms of really having that kind of a mind. I think Paramahansa Yogananda did fairly well along those lines. Okay, ACI. Well, it says here, revelation is the end. The means are needed to get there. So, you know, a human being has to be born. The brain has to develop fully. You have to get, past the brain developing fully, and ideas and the mind and life and understanding, and then bring about what real perfection is in terms of thoughts, words, actions, everything about what perfection is. Jesus accomplished this, according to the Rancha book, around the age of 30. However, he didn't begin his public mission until 31 and a half years old, according to the Rancha book. ACIM, the following introduction dictated by HS, which is Helen Schuckman or Schumann, or however it's said, without notes. The following is the only detailed description which need be written down as to how error interferes with preparation. The events specifically referred to here could be any events, nor does their particular influence matter. It is the process which is to be noted here and not its results. The kind of beliefs and the fallacious premises involved in misthought are as well exemplified here as elsewhere. There is nothing of special interest about the events described below except their typical nature. If this is a course in mind training, then the whole value of this section rests only in showing you what not to do. The more constructive emphasis is, of course, on the positive approach. Mind watching would have prevented any of this from occurring and will do so anytime you permit it to. So again, administrative type things are being written down. I would say this is um, interdictation from Helen. Is the interdictation is the phrase used in the preface of the FIP edition of ACIM. So that's probably the best term for it. I mean, automatic writing is a term for it. Um, Interdictation sounds good, but so this probably is, In other words, the words being written down are coming from a spirit being and not from Helen herself. Um, Still, it's administrative type things being said here to Helen. So, I mean, the book talks a lot about what not to do versus what to do. I mean, obviously, the emphasis should be on living right. Just do what is peace, joy, strength, goodness, and ignore everything that's not peace, joy, strength, goodness. I mean, the book talks about that, but book talks a lot about what the ego mentality is and what not to do. All right. ACIM. Tell B, which probably stands for Bill Thetford, tell B that the reason why he was so strange yesterday is because he allowed himself a number of fear producing attitudes. They were fleeting enough to be more will of the wisps than serious will errors. But unless he watches this kind of thing, he will find the notes fearful and, knowing him well, will misdistantiate. His unprovoked irritation was unpardonable, except by himself, and he did not choose to pardon it. You did, but I'm afraid you were under some strain in doing so. This was unfortunate and weakened your own ability to behave healingly toward Louis, who did act stupidly. But one stupidity at a time is usually enough. Again, probably interdictation, but more personal to Helen than general information for everyone. Certainly, the ACIM, be vigilant for God and His kingdom in terms of my thoughts. Don't let any ego thoughts into my mind. Like, just don't do it. Anything that's not perfect, peace, joy, strength, love, goodness, any mental upset of any kind, do not let them into my mind. Do not let them into your mind. Do not give them any energy. Having egoic thoughts, what I want to do is uh, reduce and eventually have, you know, get rid of all the energy that ego thoughts have so that they no longer occur in my mind or your mind. That's the idea. I believe Louis is Helen's husband. I could be wrong about that. ACIM. Bill, having already weakened himself, was very unmiracle minded. First, by not asking Dora if she wanted a lift. Even if she didn't, she would have been able to use the thought well. There is probably no human error that is more fear provoking in the will behavior conflict sense than countering any form of error with error. The result can be highly inflammable. Uh, yeah, I mean, so error, the goal is to get out of all error in terms of what error is. And error is any uncomfortable feeling, any unpleasant emotion, anything outside of perfect peace, purely joyous, perfect love, supremely happy, perfect strength, perfect kindness, anything outside of that is error. You don't want to uh, counter error with error. You don't want to try different ego ways of doing things. Uh, there's a sense in the book about you could try every circuitous way of the ego mentality in terms of try the same things different ways to find peace, joy, love, happiness. It will not work. Inflammable. Uh, I mean, just like maybe it said earlier about the gospel of Jesus is, you know, with strength, joy, peace, goodness, love, get as interested in everyone and everything as possible. Um, you know, life is about living with phenomenal enthusiasm, a happy lightheartedness, goodness, kindness, strength. The ability to shut up and be silent when that's appropriate, but just an overall, character of strength, joy, peace, goodness, love. From a positive sense. Or there is the opposite of all that in terms of negative anything.